Well, there's nothing quite like in the middle of a stormy time here in Wales with the wind blowing around the house, wondering if the roof's going to come off, and the rain pouring against the windows to get a FaceTime message from a dear friend, Johnny Tudor, in the sunshine. Where were you, Johnny? Where have you been?
I was in Tenerife. Well, I nearly didn't make it because, there was a hurricane going on.
Right.
And I heard that the bridge was about to close and I was flying from Bristol.
Oh, my gosh.
So I thought, well, we better go the night before just in case. Good job I did because they closed the bridges.
Yeah, of course they did.
Anyway, we were supposed to fly at 9 in the morning. We eventually took off at 5 at night.
Oh, my gosh.
8 hours delay.
Wow.
It was mayhem there.
I can imagine.
Because apparently there was over 40 mile an hour winds.
Right.
So they couldn't get the steps up to the plane. It'd be getting blown away. I mean, it was that bad,
Yeah.
Anyway, eventually, as soon as we got up in the air, it was fine. And I had 7 days of sunshine.
Did you? Let me just check then. Did you get a chance to? Yes. Did you get to do a little bit of sunbathing? I'm looking at your face now, Johnny.
A little bit. I look a little bit. Yeah.
Mahogany, Johnny Mahogany Tudor.
I sat by the pool and I swam in the sea and I
know, Johnny. You FaceTimed me. I saw it all. I saw the pool, and I saw the sun loungers and your book and all of that. Was it good fun? Was it good fun?
It was great. Well, it was just to relax, really. I mean, after all this rubbish with the old COVID, it was nice to get away.
Yeah.
And there wasn't too many restrictions. The only restriction was, as usual, here. You have to put your mask on going into a restaurant or a shop, but you could take it off as soon as you're there.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, in the street, you didn't have to wear one, and it was, on the beach, obviously. So it was very relaxing, very nice. Had some lovely food.
Oh.
I met some nice restaurateurs, so I habla español with them and practiced my Spanish.
Well done. That's good.
I found out that they don't call potatoes patatas or like they do in Spain.
Right.
In the Canaries, they call them papos.
Papos?
And apparently it comes from the South American. That's what they call them there, papas. Papas or papos, papas.
Papas.
But I think... Didn't they get potatoes from the South Americans in the first place?
Exactly, yeah. Well, they did.
But perhaps it's an Indian name. They came over. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, look, we thought we'd talk about travelling today, then, because you've been on your travels. Yeah. Travelling to gigs, travelling light. I mean, you have had some amazing journeys, haven't you?
Well, I'll tell you the worst one first.
First one first, okay.
I had an unscrupulous agent who sent me to do the American bases in Germany.
Right.
But he sent me by train. So I get on a boat train from Blinken, where was it? Not Southampton, one of the Portsmouth, one of them, to the Hook of Holland on a boat.
Right.
And then I had to have a boat train that took me all the way then to Wiesbaden.
Right.
Right. I'm on this train and there's a woman a bit older than me following me about. And I was only young, like 19 or something. And I thought, this woman's stalking me. I couldn't hide from her. But that was only the start of it. Once I got to Wiesbaden, okay, doing the gigs, although I didn't get much money. Well, I suppose in those days, 50 quid a week was quite a lot. Mm-hmm. But in Germany, it wasn't because everything was much more expensive than England. So I kept running out of money, Anyway, so this unscrupulous agent said, right, you got a gig now. I said, where? He said, in Naples. I said, oh, okay, you're going on a train. So the train from Wiesbaden via Frankfurt to Naples, it's like a day and a half.
Yeah.
The worst part was halfway there, the restaurant car went on strike, so I had no food. And I get down to Naples, and he sent me to this place. I may have told you this story, but it was for the American Navy.
Right.
What was it called? The Bluebird Club. I go in there, and there's a little square stage, and 4 MPs stood on every corner, one corner, I said, what are they doing there? Oh, we can't have that. He said, the thing is, with the artists, they get molested by the audience, especially if they're women. So we've got to have the police. Oh, this is a good gig, this one. The band were Italian who couldn't understand English, and they didn't read music, only tonic sol fa.
Right.
I said, what? Do re flipping me? And they said, yeah. So the girl singer could speak a bit of English. She said, I translate it for you. So she has stood by the pianist going, when she saw C, she goes, do, D, fa. And they played it.
Wow.
And it was a 6-piece band, and they played it.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it, the whole act. But that was one of the worst trips.
Yeah, and on the trains in Europe, I suppose in those days, obviously it wasn't steam, but they weren't terribly well kitted out, were they? I mean, in later years, I mean, some of those European trains are absolutely magnificent.
They're good. I had what they call a couchette.
Oh.
Which is like... a poor man's sleeper.
Right.
And you're sharing with O'Donnell Elliot, the next bloke, and it comes on, it's a hard bed that comes out of the wall and you lay on it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I did have one great trip once. I was doing the QE2. I was doing the cabaret on the QE2. So they flew me out to Bali, and I stayed on until we hit Singapore, and I was coming home from Singapore. So I had my ticket, my return ticket. And then John Craven got on. John Craven used to do the news round.
Right.
Yeah, but he was coming on to do a lecture or something. He said, I got your ticket here, John, he said. So what for? Well, to fly you home. I said, no, I got my ticket. He said, no, he said, the ship, the Cunard line, have hired the Concorde for the passengers, and there's a free seat on it.
No!
I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it won't cost them anything. They've hired it anyway. You just go home on Concorde. I went Singapore to London in 8 hours.
Goodness me. What was Concorde like there? Because it looked like, when I've seen the pictures of it, it's pretty small, isn't it?
Well, there's 2 seats either side of the aisle, that's it.
Right.
But they're 2 large, lovely, leather
recliners,
seats. And they're serving you food on, proper cutlery and proper china. And once you take off and you're up there, you're so high, you can't feel any turbulence whatsoever because it's so high.
Right.
You can actually see the curve of the earth, actually see it. You're on the edge of space. So then there's a big clock in the front, and it goes up to Mach 1, and everybody claps. And it goes up to Mach 2, and they all clap again. See? And then they come along and say, would you like to go into the cockpit, sir? I said, what do you mean? Well, everybody can have a chance if they want to. Go and say hello to the captain. So one by one, we went up to talk to the captain. So I said, oh, right, okay. So I got to be talking to the captain. It's a very pokey cockpit.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it's very interesting. This. He said, yes, we had the Queen on here. He said, and the Duke of Edinburgh. I said, oh, right. Yeah, Duke of Edinburgh was very interested. He liked all this, And I actually said to him, says the captain, would Her Majesty like to come up front? And his actual words were, and I quote, unless it eats hay and farts, you're not interested. And that's what he said. It's great, though. And then we came down in Sri Lanka, just a bit of refueling, took off, did a wing thing, and came back to London. So that's the best trip I ever had. Because
that's the thing.
What about you?
Well, that's the things that, you go from that extreme. I suppose the very first, intercontinental flight was when I went on tour with Max Boyce, and it was wonderful. But we were in economy.
Was that your Australian trip?
Yeah, so we went from London, Gatwick to Hong Kong via Cathay Pacific. I remember getting on, just thinking, this is the life of it. Max actually was in first class. He used to come back every so often and go, you doing all right, boys? Yeah, we just had champagne. We rubbing it in. But they were
a good company, Cathay Pacific. It was a nice plane.
Fantastic. And they used to have, like the menu. As soon as you got on, they give you the cocktail menu. Well, I hadn't had a cocktail. Well, by the end of the trip, I'd had them all. I went, what about this one? They bring it up. So we landed. I was still at 20,000 feet when we landed in Hong Kong. And then you get into Hong Kong. I'm not sure if you ever flew into Hong Kong, did you? Through Kai Tak Airport?
Yeah, I flew Pan Am via Hong Kong to Australia, and then when I came back from Australia, I came the other way around via Los Angeles.
Oh wow! Well, in Kai Tak, you used to come down through the washing.
It's terrible. You come down. It's before they built the new airport.
Yeah.
And it was like you were going to go into a skyscraper any minute. It was horrendous.
Get over the hill and then whoosh, here we go. And then we are. And then you can see people almost like waving from their window. Well, they weren't bothered. Yeah. I was waving. I was just pleased. Well, I was still having a cocktail. So you go from that extreme, don't you? And then you mentioned the couche. I had to get when I went on tour with Art Garfunkel for 6 months around Europe. Sometimes I'd be on a bus with everybody because that was all paid for. But because I wasn't actually getting paid to do the gig, because I was just touring around and selling the CDs out to the back of the hall.
You were busking.
I was just trying to get some. How do I get? So we'd gone to a place called Campione. Now Campione is an interesting place. We were actually staying in Lake Como in a lovely hotel, lovely old hotel. But Campione was, they said, and obviously, allegedly, it was owned by the mafia. And so you couldn't, you had to go through, you were in Italy, but you had to go through Switzerland to Campione. So it was like you crossed the border. And I think you had to cross people's palms with silver to get across the border in time. Anyway, so they've got 3 days later after Campione, we had a gig in Prague. Okay. So they're all taking a flight. It's going to cost £300 for me to take a flight. Well, I didn't have any money at all, so I'll go by train, and that was it.
Who paid for your hotel? Did you have to pay that as well?
Sometimes the hotels were free. Sometimes I had to pay for the hotel as well. So it was like this. I was building up this bill. I thought, well, I can't fly. So yeah, I just went to the train station in Como and said, I want to go to Prague, please. And it's amazing how kind people are, because there was guitar in one hand, bag of CDs in the other, clothes on my back, and they planned the trip for me, and it was really interesting because if I'd have got on a plane, I'd have got in a coach to the airport, to the airport, to the hotel. Well, it meant that then I went right through the Alps, I think it must have been, to Stuttgart, right in Stuttgart, about midnight, and then caught the sleeper train from Stuttgart to Prague. And there were four of us in this sleeper compartment. There was this gentleman. His first time he was going back since 1968. He was deaf, but he could speak English. And there were two American students. And of course, you sort of sat around on your bunks. What do you do? I'm a student. I'm going back. So what do you do? I'm on tour with Art Garfunkel. What? And
he fell about.
Yeah, right. Oh, but then I showed him my little ticket, the Art Garfunkel tour pass, and then. But it was amazing because that trip, you're going through all these lovely parts of Europe, and at the time Prague was actually pretty dirty because it was late 90s. It had come out of communism, but it was still struggling. So then going back years later. 2 years ago, looking how beautiful it was, and I think that's probably why. Place, you look at the pictures of Kiev now on the TV. And,
that's right.
And how beautiful Kiev is.
I mean, that beautiful church they've got in the middle of the square there, which is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
And this nutter's going to bomb it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And these. The buildings.
I can't believe people can do this.
No, and these. The buildings are so wonderful because they come from a different era in many instances. Prague was the capital of the Habsburgs for a little while, so they built these amazing palaces, which got covered in grime through all the communist era, and now that they've been repainted and you just your heart goes out, as people, we're talking about travelling and being difficult because the buffet car's closed. I know.
We don't know we're born, do we?
And then you think about those vast distances across Europe, aren't they? Because particularly if because when we get on a plane, you fly to Tenerife, you're there in a couple of hours, or you fly to Prague, it's 2.5 hours, something like that. When you go by road or by train, you just realise how big and how beautiful Europe is as well, isn't it?
I remember waking up on this train trip to Naples, and I woke up and there was a big mountain at the side of me. It was in Switzerland. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
All of a sudden.
But, we're lucky in a way, though. We've done this travelling and we've seen the world, and been paid for it. But in your case, you didn't get paid for it.
I didn't get paid for it. Just about paid my way for it.
Was it good, that trip? I mean, obviously great working with Art Garfunkel, but did it do you good?
Did it do me good? I'm not sure. It came back with amazing stories because the band that Art Garfunkel had assembled were amazing. I mean, they were master craftsmen from the New York sort of recording scene. There's one guy called Eric Weisberg, big guy, Eric, and he played guitar. And he had a hit with dueling banjos. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, I remember that.
I remember telling me the story. He had been asked to do a film. And do you know Devil's Banjos? And he said, I know. And so they flew him down to the deep south with a mate of his, and they recorded in a bus shelter, that sort of a bus pickup stop. They had to go back and do it again. And then a year later, he was doing a session, and somebody said, I heard your record this morning. He said, well, what record? And they said, that dueling banjos thing. And 6 weeks later, it had gone to number one. He didn't even know it had been released. Made a fortune.
Amazing. Did they play for you, the band, or were you just a one-man band yourself?
just me. Turn up, plug in. As sometimes we had a great drummer, a guy called Steve Gadd. He played on 50. Do you know 50 Ways to Leave a Lover?
Yeah.
He's like the master craftsman. So I'd get there early and I'd sound check his drums for him to save him having to come in early. So that was great. But the great times were on the tour bus in between some of these venues. When we were on a bus, I'd butt out and just listen to these guys telling these stories, about working with all the legendary artists like Sinatra and like Judy Collins and all these different people. And I remember, they'd obviously lived a lot, these guys said.
Yeah.
And Steve Gadd, I think, used to have quite a big drug problem, but he's clean now, and he used to go running every morning. And I remember him saying, so-and-so, is he still, is he clean now? Is he clean? And then he went off into a world of his own. He just said, I suppose he must be, he's still alive. You know, so it was those sort of stories that have stuck.
There was
with
a
you
sax
ever since.
player called Pete. What was his second name? He's the one that started the jazz club in London with the famous other saxophone.
Oh, with Ronnie Scott, something.
With Ronnie Scott. Pete King.
Right.
His name was Peter King. If you look him up, he was a famous sax player. And I was doing, talking about drugs, and he was doing a week with me in there was a club in London off Bond Street called the Celebrity Restaurant, which is owned by Raymond's Review Bar guy, Paul Raymond. Anyway, and we were doubling it with the American-based hotel called Douglas House, right? So we do the first gig, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to carry my sax, man." He was literally, he could hardly walk, okay? And I'm carrying his sax for him till we get to the next gig. And he went on stage and he blew his brains out. Like nothing wrong with him. And he came up and went,
Isn't that amazing?
But again, he kicked it afterwards, of course. But he was a terrible stage.
As you say, if he didn't kick it, is he clean? Yes, he's still alive. It's funny you mentioned Peter King, the saxophone player, because the guitarist in Max's band, lad from Swans, he used to play in Bonnie Tyler's band. His name's Peter King. So we were sharing together in Hong Kong.
All right.
Of course, you check in M Pope, name P King.
That's like what's name's joking it. Oh, pal, Win Calvin. You can. What's the difference between roast beef and pea soup?
I don't know.
Well, you can roast beef. Did you happen to see his funeral?
I caught a little bit of online. He's a special man, and he dearly loved. You could tell by the funeral service that was online.
And the speeches, were very funny.
Yeah. Any trips that you'd like to do? Any trips?
Well, people ask me this. Where haven't you been, John? And I literally can't really think where I haven't been. I've been to Russia.
Yeah, you have been to Russia.
I went to St. Petersburg. I went to Vladivostok. I've been to Japan. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Canada. I've been to... I haven't worked in the States.
Right.
And I've only ever been in transit to the States. So probably I'd like to see more of the States. I know it sounds crazy, because that's probably the first place most people go to America, down there. But I've never done it. I've flown into Los Angeles to go somewhere else, or flown into... I remember flying home from Australia, and I don't know where there was a detour, and I ended up in Seattle.
Right.
Don't ask me why, but I'm sitting in Seattle, and it's raining like hell,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting next to a bloke, and he was an Eskimo, and he had all the gear on. He was sitting next to me. So I don't know where he'd come from. But I've never actually seen the actual country, so I should do it one day. Get the old car and do, the Vegas bit. And
New York.
I always wanted to go to Vegas when it was the days when the boys were there. Your Sinatras and Sammy Davis.
Yeah.
That was real Vegas, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's more like a playground now, more
Disneyland for grown-ups.
Yeah, it's Disneyland for grown-ups, isn't it?
Yeah.
But those days, can you imagine seeing all those guys on stage? They were giants.
Yeah. And the lovely thing about your travels is that we're lucky that we have this transferable skill that people like singing and dancing and all that, don't they? And once you show you can do that, they'll. I remember we were in Wellington, having done Max's gig, and Windy Wellington, as it was called in the band. We went to a Chilean restaurant, it was late on a Sunday night. We were the only ones in the restaurant, but they had a little stage that every so often the waiters would go up and play a couple of songs, Chilean songs. So we were big Linda Ronstadt fans, me and the boys.
Oh, I liked Linda Ronstadt. She was great.
And there was a song called Lo siento mi vida. Well, anyway, it was one of these songs really in Spanish. So we said, would you like us to give you a tune? So we went up, myself, Peter King, and Paul Carmen, sadly no longer with us. And in 3-part harmony, we sang this Spanish song. Yeah. Well, everybody was in tears. We didn't have to pay for anything. We had free food, free beer. It was just, wonderful.
Because Linda Ronstadt, was she Mexican?
Mexican-American, yeah. So from Austin in Texas. So her parents were, she was definitely,
Yeah, it was like
Tex-Mex.
Vicky Carr was another great singer. She was Mexican, American.
Yeah.
Remember her, Vicky Carr, back in the 60s?
Great voice.
Great, and she used to cry when she used to sing,
Wow.
What's that lovely joke about the guys... and he's on the stage and he's singing Land of My Fathers, and the fella in the front and he's crying. He said, "What are you, a Welshman?" He said, "No, I'm a musician."
I got to tell you, because this week I did a gig at the a cappella, so I'm back on tour this month. I mean, the Gwyn Hall. Was it Welfare Astragan Lice? I mean, Theatre Mulden and Bilthwells. Anyway, I put in a song from the Tommy Farr musical, because Tommy used to always sing the Welsh National Anthem. You know, at the end, and his fights, he'd pick the mic from him, he'd sing the national anthem, there'd be 10, 20,000 Welshmen in the crowd, they're all singing along with him. So at the end of the musical, and it's a terrible theatrical trick that I played on the audience with Contender, but I wrote a song that sort of intertwines with the national anthem, right?
Right, okay.
So you don't know it until you know it, and then suddenly it becomes the national anthem. Well, of course, at the end of a theatre show, sing the Welsh national anthem in Wales, everybody gets to their feet. Well,
that's right.
Standing ovation every night. And as I was putting it together for the show at a cappella, I might keep it in the rest of the tour, actually, because you want people on their feet at the end.
You want them to get up.
Absolutely. Right. I found myself in tears. It was just bizarre, you know. I mean,
did you listen to that thing I sent you? I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it.
No.
Dorothy Squire's doing the irony of war.
I'm gonna have a listen, particularly with what we all go through now.
It's amazing. I mean, I remember her doing it. I was on a play day when she did it. But it's so, and now it's even more poignant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an amalgam of about 3 songs about this kid. It's from a show called The Matahari, I think.
Right.
And it's about a little boy. He's a conscript and he's out there. He's got to shoot this other kid, and he looked at him. He said, "He's like me. He's only a kid like me. I don't want to shoot him, but can I do it?" You know, you have a listen to it. It'll drive you crazy. It's a lovely song.
And I'll put the link in the bottom. Down at the bottom of our Facebook video and our YouTube video, and I'll put it on the podcast as well for Podbean. So, all right. Well, look. Well, we got through another one, Johnny. We got through another one.
Aye, we got through another one. We'll see if we can get a couple of guests on. I think we don't like it.
Let's put our thinking caps on. We're going to get some guests, so we are. So if you're out there, it could be you. So in the meantime, from Johnny Mahogany Tudor, it's goodbye from him. Pale face. Look at the pale face boy. The pale Father Christmas. See you soon. Bye.
All the best, mate. Ta-da. Ta-da.